The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 13 of Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. Joining me this week on the Coach's Corner panel is Jim Endicott and Pete Buchanan. I'll introduce both of them in just a little second or two. Also tonight, I'm going to be kicking off this season's travel segment with Robert Kaufman, my co-host and a travel expert, along with our special travel guest, Jake Browning-Perry from Golfbreaks by PGA Tour. And then later on, my featured guest of the evening will be Greg Nathan. He is the president and CEO of National Golf Foundation. He'll be joining me a little bit later on in the broadcast as well, so hope you stick around for that. All right, let me introduce the guys, and then I'll bring them out onto the Coach's Corner panel, and we'll have our discussion this evening. First up is Jim Endicott. He's currently a PGA Education faculty member and a PGA specialized professional in teaching and coaching. He's a former Golf Digest School's general manager and a 7-time PGA Award winner, including the 2022 North Florida PGA Section Patriot Award and 2 North Florida PGA Youth Development Awards. He's also a Golf Tips Magazine Top 25 instructor and contributor as well. Also on the panel tonight is Pete Buchanan. Pete's been teaching this great game now for over 30 years. He's the founder and director of instruction for Plain Simple Golf, and Plain Simple Golf houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And Pete's been helping golfers literally around the globe focusing on building a repeatable swing. So guys, I want to welcome you to tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
Thank you, Ted. It's great to be here. Looking forward to tonight.
All right. So last week on the Coach's Corner, the discussion we had was how to prepare for a new season. So we had that discussion last week. This week, I want to follow up with something a little bit different, and that is developing consistency in order to have a successful season. So we want to work on being a more consistent player. So we're going to talk about some things. And Jim, I'm going to start off with you, if you don't mind. And what I'd like to get you to talk about is what are some of the, obviously you're not going to be able to get to all of them, but maybe what are some of the factors that we need to consider when looking for consistency in our game? What might some of those be?
Well, I think we have to look at what we might define consistency to be. Consistency is going to vary based on the player, their skill set, and really their ambitions in the game. A newer golfer is going to have a certain level of consistency that would be different than a more experienced player. And so I think we need to look at some statistical things. The newer golfer, we're going to look at how are they hitting it? Are they getting it in the air? Are they having some fun? And those things would probably land into their level of consistency. And as we progress in our skill set to be more advanced and or more experienced in the game, our consistency may run into more statistical information in terms of, am I driving it into the fairway? Am I driving it onto the green? Am I getting it up and down? How close to the hole am I hitting it when I do reach the green? How are my putts? Am I making a lot of putts? Am I close enough to make putts? And so we need to look at those different sorts of things to determine if I'm consistent. Many times the player looks at how they're performing in terms of striking the golf ball. And I don't know that it just falls into that area. I believe that striking the ball is important. Hitting it up and down, putting it, those sorts of things are important. But we're here to play a game. We're here to score. We're here to play our best and have the most fun. And so we need to look at those statistical things to determine what are the items I need to work on. And if I'm driving it in the fairway and I'm knocking it on the green, but I'm a long ways from the hole, now some might look at it as I'm an inconsistent putter because I'm not making very many putts. But the reason I'm not making very many putts is I have hit it too far away from the hole. And so I'm in that three putt proximity versus the player who's missing a lot of greens and they're chipping it up there and they're having 2 or 3 foot putts. I think back to a player I had one time in one of our golf schools, and along about the third day of the golf school, he says to me, I'm getting worse. I'm getting less consistent as we're progressing here. And I said, oh, really? Why do you say that? He said, well, on day one, when I went out on the golf course and every shot I hit towards the green was near the green. And when he then said, and today when I played, all of my shots were in the bunker. And I said, okay, let's go back to Monday. When you said near the green, where were they really relative to the green? And he said, well, I was to the right of the bunker on 1, and I was to the left of the bunker on 2. Right. And now we're here on Wednesday, and I'm in the bunkers. And he all of a sudden went, actually, I am getting consistent. He was just simply looking at it from a wrong perspective and let's call it the wrong metrics of what was I doing out there. So the consistency falls into several categories: hitting the golf ball, but it comes into understanding our game and how we move the golf ball around the green, or around the golf course.
Right. Yeah, it's a really great point. And really what the purpose of our discussion is, and you really covered it well, because you talked about the different levels of golfers. And obviously, unless we dial in on somebody specific, there's going to be a lot of variances, and what one person might look for in consistency might be different than what somebody else looks into. But generally what people are wanting to, I think, overall find is, maybe a better word would be a regularity. So in other words, he wants to be consistently hitting at the same distance for each club, and he wants to his disbursement pattern wants to be relatively tighter. So that way, if he needs to make adjustments, he knows the variances on either side that he has to work with. So it makes his decision making a little bit easier. So I think that's really what we're looking for here. But great answers. I like how you laid it out there, Jim, as well. Here's one that I want to talk to you about here. And what I find is that when we look at some players, some of the clubs in the bag just don't work. A lot of times players get out in the practice tee and the driver's just not, cutting it for them, or maybe they've played a few holes and something else is just not. Do we need to set those clubs aside maybe momentarily and work with lefties in the bag instead of trying to tee off with my driver? Maybe I need to look at one of my fairway woods or a hybrid to tee it off for that day, and maybe work on that other together. Or maybe is it an entire look at the whole set of clubs and maybe think about getting some of those clubs out and changing them out altogether with something different? So do we set them aside and focus on the ones that we do have success with and change them out later? Or what do we need to do? If you've got somebody that's have that issue, what are some of the options that they need to consider?
Well, that's a loaded one there. I mean, no, it's all of the above. I mean, basically, right, when I'm talking about tee shots, I'd say you have to hit it in the fairway as far down as you can. And you have to remember as far down as you can. Now, sometimes if you're hitting driver and it's not going in the fairway, then you need to pick up something else. And loft is always going to help you. So, if the driver's not working that particular day, switch down to a 3-wood hybrid driving iron, which they have today, which, back in the good old days, you and I all know, we used to hit a 1-iron off the tee because it was easier than a driver at times. But,
yeah.
They've replaced it with a driving iron now. But yes, I would definitely go down to get a golf club that's going to put the ball in the fairway. And then you can either look at the equipment you have in the bag when you're finished, or you can work on something when you're finished. I know when I warm up, and Jim's probably heard this before, the last 6 or 8 balls I hit are with the driver to see if I can even use it. Because if I can't land it in the range with any consistency, I'm probably not going to land it in the fairway. So I want to look and see what the driver's doing. And then off the first tee, I'm going to take something out of there, at least to settle me down until I feel pretty comfortable. And then I can go with a driver later, or pick a hole that is wide enough that, if I do hit an error, it won't get me any trouble. But I would definitely look at, putting more loft in your hands off the tee. I would look at also fairway shots, fairway woods. I would try those with more loft. A lot of times, amateurs will try a 3-wood off a lie. That's just not conducive to hitting a 3-wood. The ball doesn't sit up high enough, so a 5 or 7 would actually go further anyway. So you can look at it in that respect. And then, yes, if there are certain clubs in your bag that you don't hit very well, you might look at maybe replacing it with something else. If it's a long iron, maybe a hybrid will do. If it's a wedge that has a bounce that's not very conducive to what you do as far as your swing goes, maybe you can switch a wedge out that will, contact the turf a little bit easier for you. So, yeah, I think it's basically all of the above, but, As Jim said, we have to score. And so you've
Yeah.
got to find a golf club that's going to keep it on the golf course in the first place. And so if you need to switch it out, switch it out. There's 14 of them. So they gave you some, it's not that you have to hit 3 and that's the end of it. Or, they used to put a 1 on the bottom of the driver. It didn't mean it had to be the first one you hit. It just had a 1 on it. So, hit something on the tee that's going to allow you to put it in the fairway. So again, as far down the fairway as you can. And if that club you have isn't landing it in the fairway, then find something that will.
Yeah, because I think what happens with a lot of our golfers is they know they're not hitting the driver. It may be just a one-off. It might be that particular day they're not playing very well. It doesn't mean that they have to pull it out of the bag permanently, but they need to certainly be realistic in what they're doing. And if it is something that's giving them a lot of issues, and depending on the level of seriousness of a player they are, if there's somebody that's playing once in a while, pull it out and let's find something else. If there's somebody that really wants to work on their game and become a better player overall, then that driver is going to have to be worked on at some point. But today's not the day to do it. Let's not use it. Let's find, as you said, another club that's going to do the job and keep us in the fairway so that we have a better chance of scoring. And that's really what it all boils down to. If you're not scoring well, you're not happy with your game, and then you're likely just going to, get to the point where you're not enjoying it anymore. Sort of on that note a little bit, Jim, and again, I'm using the word consistency. I know there may be other adjectives that we could use, but how do we take advantage of scoring opportunities utilizing the consistency, especially when you're not a long ball hitter? There's a lot of folks out there that can't, pound it down the center, 250 to 300 yards, and maybe they're 180, 225 tops. They're not really a long ball hitter. So being a better, more accurate, maybe way of putting it, player with their irons and other clubs in the bag, how do we take it? If we're not a long ball hitter, how do we then utilize other parts of our game to become a more better player overall, but obviously give opportunities of scoring better? What are your thoughts here?
Well, going back to the idea that we started off with on that consistency, and it'll lead back into what you're asking here, in that consistency factor of coming back into the game for this season, we need to understand in our lesson, what are we working on? If my golf ball's flying off to the right and I've got a grip issue, I need to be able to identify that based on how that ball flew. And if I happen to be one that hit thin shots or top them and that sort of thing, I need to be able to identify in my lesson that in order to pop that ball into the air, perhaps I need to change my posture just a little bit, or I need to get the club pointed up over my shoulder so I can swing it down. So the overall consistency and overall arching way to look at it is, what am I doing in my lesson with my instructor? And can I identify when I haven't performed what I wanted? Can I identify it based on the flight of the golf ball and come back to say, if my ball does this, then my body must get in this setup position and or swing it. But then coming back to that and taking that on the golf course, we need to, going back to what I said in terms of understanding our game, Pete said it great. We have to hit our drive as far down the fairway as we can. But I think it also comes down to, are we playing the golf course from the appropriate yardage to be able to play and enjoy and score our best? And I like to look at that from the perspective of, if someone hits a tee shot that, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, they hit one that's a 7, 7.5. So they hit it pretty well. They should have somewhere in the neighborhood of a 7 iron or less into a par 4. Now, if they're not playing first off in that kind of a distance, they've already put themselves behind the 8 ball. So we need to make sure we're playing from the right location. And then going back to our analysis of statistics, what is it that it works well? I recall a story that one of our other faculty members told of a player who came to them and said, if you could get me to drive at 90, I'm a 10 handicap. If you can get me to drive at 290, I can shoot even par. So the faculty member took him on the golf course, and every hole, par 4 and par 5, walked him out 290 from the tee, dropped the ball and said, play on.
Right.
The guy shot 85. So he had the wrong understanding of what it was for him to be his best. And they looked at the statistical information from that round and said, we need to work on the wedges around the green because you're missing greens. Even though you were closer, you still missed the green, just as you did when you drove at 250. So we have to understand our game our choices, as Pete was saying, what is my best choice here to make sure that I give myself the best chance to be in a better place than I am right now, giving myself a good opportunity to hit a good shot on the next one. And that's really what golf is about. As you said, Pete, very appropriately, drive it as far down the fairway. That's better than being on the tee. And on a par four, what's our objective? Knock it on the green. That's better than being in the fairway. And when I'm on the green, what am I trying to do? Get it in or close to the hole, and that's better than being 50 feet away. So that's the overall idea of what golf is about. And so we need to look at how we can navigate that golf course with our best opportunity to hit good shots, putting us in a better place than we are.
That is a really great, story that you're sharing, because, that's so true. If you think about it, everybody's always, I want more distance. I want to be able to hit, if I could just hit it an extra 20, 30 yards. So they're out buying the equipment, that they think is going to get them there. But yeah, you drop a ball out at 290 or 270, whatever their yardage is, and they're still not able to capitalize it, then it's not a distance issue that they're having. It's something else in their game. And I think that's a great analogy. We think about it a lot as coaches and as instructors. But from a player's perspective, a lot of them don't really equate the two. They don't really understand. They just think, okay, if I could just hit it a little bit further, if I could just do this a little bit better, I know that's going to solve a lot of problems. And how many times have we heard that in life? If I could just do this, all of my problems would go away. Well, it's the same thing on the golf course. Now you have to understand, first off, what the problems are, isolate the issues and then find the appropriate course of action to deal with them. And you laid that out perfectly. I think that's a great analogy. Thank you for that. So Pete, I think this sort of falls in your wheelhouse as well. Being accurate with your short irons is definitely a must to hitting your target, as we talked about. However, a lot of golfers struggle with hitting their wedges flush. I mean, even though that's an easier club to hit than, say, some of our longer clubs, they're still not making good contact with them. So how can we help those golfers that are not utilizing we'll say their shorter clubs, 9-iron wedges, that sort of thing? What can we do? What is it they're doing typically from what your experience shows? What are they doing wrong? Why are they having so much difficulty struggling even with their wedges? And what can we do to help them?
Yeah, that's a great one there. I think, using today's terminology, I think if these players, especially with pitch shots, they got to understand where their low point is. So many times the bottom of the swing is just in the wrong place, and it's usually too far behind the ball. And
Right.
So they're trying to help it up in the air, which is, not going to do anything for them anyway. There's loft on the club to help it up in the air, but we still have to have the club moving down. So if they can understand better how to move themselves to get the low point in the right place, they're going to make better contact right away. So that's the first thing I would do. And I would give them, as Jim was talking about, what are they trying to do in the first place? I can remember Jacobs telling me that all the time. What are we trying to do? That's the first thing he always said. What are you trying to do here? It's not hit it in the lake. So what are we trying to do? So you have to look at, the shot you're trying to make, and then understand, what do I have to do to produce that? And for the most part, I find it, especially with today's measurements, you can measure 3D, you can measure everything. So you can really look at how they're moving into the ball, where the low point is, how they're moving, how the body's moving, and you can really see what's going on and get them in a better position so that they can get the contact better. And that stems down from 8, 9 wedge into the pitch shots. But also, going back to what you were talking about with consistency, you also have to make your practice the same all the time. You have to work at the same things. And, I think a lot of times when they watch the ball flight takes away from their ability to continue practicing the same things. They react to what the ball does. They do something different on the next one. And then 6 swings later, they've done 6 different things. And they say, man, I'm not consistent at all. Well, no wonder you're not. You can't, it's just, how that happens. And so, I had a session the other day. We were working exactly on low point. And he said, I want to work on pitching today. And he came in and he's looking around and goes, there's no golf balls. It's not, we're not using any golf balls yet. You have to understand the motion you have to make first. And I'm not going to let you react to the balls you see, because that's going to take us away from the motions we're trying to make. So we spent about 35 minutes just working on movement. And then I put some balls down and there they went. So now he was focused on making a movement rather than reacting to what he may see if he didn't hit one like he wanted to. So a lot of times it's understanding what you have to do, understanding what is necessary for the shot that you have to hit, but then practicing the proper way and the most, I would say, repetitive way, so that you can then get your shots to do the same thing all the time.
Yeah, a lot of times what I would do is just, put a tee in the ground, just obviously a little above where the ball would normally sit. And just to give them an idea so that when they're swinging the club, if they're taking a divot, if that divot's obviously going to the right of the tee, then they're coming in to either too steep or they're not coming in at the right angle. And that way they're still not seeing a reaction from the golf ball, but at the same time, they're at least seeing where their low point of their swing should be. And then we can make adjustments accordingly. So that's, again, a great point as well, because most people, I think, once they understand how the body works correctly, how to make a proper swing. And that's the thing, is everybody's always, we talk about this all the time and we reference it, and it's really a reference, but hitting the ball, we're really not hitting the ball. We're actually swinging the golf club. The ball just happens to sort of be in the way. And I think people, when they hear hitting golf ball, they're thinking, okay, I got to hit down on this golf ball. I've got to hit that golf ball. And then they kind of decelerate as they're coming in and stop and either hit, taking a really deep divot, or they ended up, falling back for whatever reason because they're not shifting their body correctly, because they're so focused on hitting that golf ball that they're not actually swinging the golf club anymore. They're reacting to basically what the terminology is. I've got to hit that golf ball. And I think if they understand how the swing actually works, the golf ball really, again, sort of gets in the way of that. And I know that's a very simplistic way of putting it, but really we want to try to make the swing and the game as simple as possible for golfers. And I think sometimes, when they're watching things, we've talked about this before, when they're watching videos online and somebody's getting very technical about things, that can be a little bit detrimental. It's important at some point, but at the same token, we have to be careful of that because sometimes we can be a little bit too technical in our jargon, and then they misunderstand what we're trying to say or the points we're trying to get across to them. So you have to be careful of that. Jim, I'm coming back to you, my friend. I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to let you guys do some more talking. So obviously consistency comes with, as Pete sort of alluded to, purposeful practice. We want to be able to make sure that we're practicing the right thing. So I'm just going to, and again, you can massage this example any way you see fit for your answer, but let's just take a 20 plus handicap player as an example. If you were working with them, what are some initial steps you're going to do, and what would their practice regimen look like after? And again, if you want to give a few more points as to the level of player they are, just to clarify your point, that's fine. By all means, feel free to do that. But if you were working with that and you know that they're a 20 handicap coming into the game, what are you going to look at first? And then once you kind of done that assessment and kind of see where they're really at, then how are you going to sort of put together a purposeful practice regiment moving forward?
Well, any lesson, and we'll use the 20 handicap. I think that's a good sample there. Any lesson starts with an interview to get an understanding of where are they at this point? What are they looking to do? What are their goals in the game? Do they have any limitations in motion and that sort? Have they taken lessons? And just really getting a good handle on who they are and what they're wanting to do. And then I watch the ball. I let them hit some shots. They've obviously played some golf. If they're a 20 handicap, I want to see that ball fly. And that gives me information. And that gives me the information on how to structure the lesson. And from the structure of the lesson and what goes on in the lesson gives me the information of assigning a practice regimen. And so if this was a lesson with a 20 handicap, first lesson with them, I'm going to get to know them as I described, but then I'm going to do a very brief ball flight class with them. And the reason I'm going to do a ball flight class, I'm going to give them the understanding of the general understanding of what makes the ball fly. Why does it fly to the right or why does it fly to the left? And that'll pull me back into that player. And so it goes something like this. I want to talk to you about what makes the ball go. And there are really 4 ingredients that make the ball go, one being the speed, and you have sufficient speed, so I'm not going to talk about that. The other one is that controls the direction is this part right here called the club face. And a correct club face is one that moves where, or looks where it's moving. And you can see as I'm doing this, it's looking where it's moving. Now it's not moving towards the camera, but it's moving off in this direction, and it's looking where it's moving. And if that occurs, the ball flies straight in the air. If it doesn't, now it's looking over in this direction, but moving towards the camera, and that would send our ball to the right. And player, you have the tendency to have your ball fly to the right. This piece here is controlled by how you hold the golf club, either the positioning of your grip or how you use it. Second ingredient, we have to have the club moving in the right direction. We call that a swing path. And then I would define the target line, and we stand to the side of the target line. Specifically, we stand on an area called inside, and therefore the club has to work in a little bit of a circle like this.
Yep.
It goes from the inside straight through the ball and back to the inside. I could err in one of two directions. I could swing off in that direction. For the right-handed golfer, that would be to the right, or I could swing over there. And player, this is where your golf club is traveling, controlled by your shoulders. Can you see now we're going to need to do something with your shoulders?
Yep.
And the third ingredient has to do with the club swinging up and back down to the ground, my arm being the ground, and then back up. And I'd like it to level off where the ball is. It could level off before the ball. That one's going up, and we top that one. Or as Pete said earlier, we hit the ground before it. Or the club can be still going down, and we call that steep. And that's not good for forward because our energy's going down.
Yeah.
That's controlled by our posture, but more importantly for us in this lesson, it's controlled by the direction you swing, and I'll take care of that when we get you swinging in the correct direction. So now I've set up the lesson. We're going to work on grip, and we're going to work on shoulders. And then we go through that process. And so maybe I show them the grip, and I give them a drill to hit with their feet together. And they hit some shots, and now the golf ball flies straight, but it flies straight to the left. And we say, well done, that's a good change. I'm not going to say it's good, because now it's 50 yards left and it was 50 yards right. It's just a change. Now, what we're going to see now is we need to change the direction you swing. You see, you swung to the left because your ball went to the right. Now that it's flying over there, player, do you still need to swing to the left? No, I don't. Okay, we're going to move the ball position further back. We're going to take some baseball swings up here, and we're going to create a swishing sound. And I'd make a swing, and we're going to make that swishing sound happen before it gets to the ball. And then I want you to make a golf swing and try to make that swishing sound behind the golf ball. So now we go through and we do the lesson, and now they're seeing some good shots. Yep. We've changed the angle, we changed the face, changed the path. Now we're finishing the lesson. How do I give them the right prescription? Okay, Mr. Smith, your golf ball when you came here flew to the right. And if your ball flies to the right when you leave, you're going to work on that grip change we made. And you're going to hit balls with your feet together. And then you're going to see your ball fly to the left. And therefore, we're going to have you remember to move the ball position further back, make some baseball swings and get the swishing before the golf ball, and then give it a hit. And you're going to do this in a manner that you're going to go practice. And I would give them an assignment based on what their time frame would be. I can practice 1 hour a week. Wonderful. I want you to give me 15 minutes of feet together working on the grip, and you're going to know that you've done it well if the ball does not fly to the right. And then you're going to work on the baseball swings, and you're going to swing it down from the inside, and you're only going to do that when you see the ball flying to the left after you worked on this. And I want you to give me 15 minutes of that. And then the next 15 minutes, you're going to hit a couple swings with the feet together, a couple swings, baseball swings, and then a couple shots with it all together. And let's see how we're transitioning there. And so now they have a prescription that fits into their time frames, and they're reading the ball flight and understanding, if this, then I produce this, or I work on this.
That's some excellent analogy and some great teaching here. I might have to get you to repeat all of that again so I can write it down for myself. Let me have to do that another time. Fortunately, I've got this recorded, so I'll be able to watch it. But again, you have to look at yourself almost really like a doctor in a sense, the same methodology that a doctor would come out. We're going to look at the symptoms. We're going to see, okay, what's the symptoms? Let's find out what's causing these symptoms, and let's see what we can do to treat those symptoms and have a better outcome. And obviously it's a little bit different, but it's essentially the same analogy. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't look at the sort of cause and effect as we always talk about it, what's causing the problem. And they don't understand that. Once they do understand that and understand what they can do to overcome some of those issues, then we can give them something, as you just pointed out, something to work on that will help correct that. And then it gives them something to work on that doesn't take a lot of time. Instead of having to go out and spend, 30, 40, 50 minutes beating balls all the time, trying to work it out, they can go and spend, 15 minutes doing this or 10 minutes doing that and getting those sensations. And then they can work on hitting the ball a little bit as well. But at the same time, they now have a better understanding of what they're doing, what's causing the issues that they have. And now they've got a solution on what they can do to sort of overcome that. and they've got a prescription, if you will. And I think that's a great way of laying that out. Thank you for that. Time has certainly become an issue for some. Everybody's always, doing other things. They don't always have as much time to invest in their golf game, other obligations, whatever the case may be. If you are working with a player that has come to you and said, I really want to be a more consistent player, I want to score better, I need to really work on my game. What is a realistic time commitment if they want to see realistic results? Because, you can't have a guy coming once every 2-3 months for a lesson or what have you, and not doing a lot in between and expect to see any results. So give us an idea. And again, I'm not talking about somebody wanting to play on tour, but just somebody that really wants to see improvement this season. What's a realistic time frame that they need to be spending on their game, whatever, prescription you write for them, that is going to give them noticeable results that they're going to be able to see? Very similar to what Jim just laid out.
Yeah, that's another great question. And, one thing I would add to what Jim was talking about is, the way he goes about that and ball flight stuff. Jim and I've done that class 1,000 times when we were back in the golf schools. The player's now working towards correct instead of fighting an incorrect. And that's really something that you always have to look for. They have to be able to figure out where correct is and have a roadmap to get there. Otherwise, it's just like getting in the ring with Tyson. I mean, they just don't have any idea where they're going, and they're just getting beat up all the time. They don't understand what they're doing. So it's really important that they work towards correct. But if somebody's coming to me realistically, you're right. Time is definitely something that can get to them. I mean, if you really want to improve, I would say you got to practice at least 2 hours a week. And I know that some people say, well, only 2 hours, but yeah, it's got to be at least 2. And I would spend at least 60% of that on the short game.
Yeah.
Putting, chipping, pitching. Get yourself within 40 yards and figure out how to get that ball on the green and in the hole. I mean, that's going to be the thing that's going to take you there faster than anything else will. And, really good pitching, chipping, and putting can make up for a lot of errant shots in a hurry. And so, you've got to be able to play the short shots. Otherwise, you can't score. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, if somebody tells you, one of their best rounds, they did everything well. And if somebody can go out and hit it pretty well and 3-putt every green, well, they're not going to score very well. So you have to have the short shot. So I'd spend at least 60% of my time on the short game. I'd spend probably 30% of the time on the full swing, and I'd spend 10% of the rest of the time on trying to figure out how to drive it better. And I know the driving's important, but if you're really trying to score better, you got to understand where the scoring is going to come from first. It's not that we're going to ignore the tee shots, but you've got to be able to understand from a time constraint that you might have, get to the areas that are going to help you score the quickest. And I think from there, you'll find that as you can putt it better, your chipping gets better. And if you can chip it better, your pitching gets better. And if your pitching gets better, your irons get better. And then if your irons are better, your driver's better. Your whole confidence goes up because now you can score. If I don't quite hit it as well as I need to off the tee, I know I can get it up and down. So it's a confidence level based on the time that you're spending. 2 hours a week, I try to recommend all the ones that, that I have, that spend at least 2 hours. And in between lessons, I want them to get, really 2 really good, solid practice sessions in where they're really working on the things we're talking about. Just like Jim was saying, you've got a roadmap of here's how I want you to practice. And I want you to make sure you do 2 really solid sessions doing just that. And if you're not going to do that, wait until you do that and then come back. Because otherwise, if you don't do them, we're just starting over again. So really take the time to practice, in the areas that we're giving you. But if it was just, somebody that say, hey, if you're only going to practice 2 hours a week, how would I do it? That's how I'd lay it out. 60% short game, 30% on the rest of the swing, and 10% of the driving.
Yeah, excellent point. I think really what it boils down to is, what is your level of commitment? If you really want to become a better player, a more consistent player, have more fun out in the golf course, what are you going to bring to the table? You know what I'm going to bring to the table and what Jim's going to bring to the table and what you're going to bring to the table, Pete. But we need to know what they're going to bring to the table. What level of commitment are they going to bring? Worst thing I hate, and we've all experienced, I guarantee it, is when a golfer comes to you for the next lesson and you've maybe done a quick recap, talked about what they've done since you saw them the last time. Well, I didn't really get a chance to get out and practice any things we did. So I'd like to kind of review some of that now if we could. So now you're spending, 15, 20 minutes going over what you did the last time, and you're not really able to move forward. And I know you have to do a little bit of a recap and maybe just a little bit of an overview, but if you're spending each time reviewing what you did the last time because they're not doing any steps or taking any steps in between to work on the things that Jim has given them or you've given them or what have you, then it's really for naught. And they're not going to see those improvements. And then ultimately we're the ones that sort of bear the brunt of it, because then we're looked at as, okay, well, you're not really helping my game. But the truth of the matter is your level of commitment is what's hampering your game. We're giving you based on years of experience and statistics, numbers, whatever, and tried and true methods that have worked for decades and some new stuff along the way. But if you're not willing to meet part way and bring your, assets, if you will, then it's really not going to be beneficial and you're not going to see improvement. And then you're just going to get frustrated as a player. And then ultimately you either one of two things, you just go out and continue to muddle around the golf course, or you stop playing altogether because you're dissatisfied. You're not happy. And that's something that we don't like to have happen, because we want people to get out and enjoy it. We want to be able to help them, and we know we are capable of helping them, but they've got to be willing to put that effort in. And so, I look at it this way. We are at the beginning of the season. I know, well, Pete, I know you're still up in the St. Louis area, so you're still dealing with some colder weather, but, Jim and I are in a little bit warmer climates and so we're able to play a little bit longer season. But for the most part, a lot of people are getting out, here now or in the next few weeks. They're going to start getting out and wanting to play. And there's things that you need to do at the beginning of the season, get an assessment, let's find out where things are. There's a lot of different things that need to happen. But most importantly is, even if you finished off great last season, but you've been hibernating for 3.5, 4 months and you haven't done anything, it's not like you're going to just pick up where you left off. Very seldomly do we ever see that happen, even with some of the best players. So you've got to get out there and work on your game, and there's things that you have to do. So great discussion tonight, guys. Thank you for always bringing your best. And I like to give each of you an opportunity to share the best way that people want to reach out and have a discussion with you, how they can go about doing that, and any final thoughts that you want to add. So Jim, I'm going to let you go first, and then Pete.
Well, thank you, Ted. And it's always a pleasure to be on the show, and it's an honor to be on the show. And if people want to reach out to me, I'd love to talk golf. I get excited about it and I love to do it. And you could email me at jim@endicott.golf.com. That's ENDICOTT golf.com.
Perfect. And Pete, what about yourself? If they want to reach out, what's the best way they can do that with you?
Yeah. Thanks again, Ted, for having me on. As Jim said, it's always an honor. Jim, it's always fun being on with you. We go back 1,000 years with golf, so it's always fun to be.
Careful now.
Yeah, we're don't worry. You and I have moved up about 3 sets of tees, so that's how long we've been doing this. But anyway, it's PeteBuchananGolf.com. All my contact information is out there. And just one little thing, we've got as I told you before, we've got a new app called IS Nation, which is starting to gain some traction. If you want a little information on that, just send me a note and I can point you in that direction too. So it's an all-inclusive sports app, which is really gaining some traction. It's an exciting part to be involved with.
Fantastic. Well, guys, as always, thank you very, very much. Always appreciate. I love the Coach's Corner. This is obviously a new format for us where we get to actually see what each other looks like, other than just hearing our voices. And I don't know if that's a good thing for the audience or not. We'll see as time moves on, as the season progresses. But we're going to have, as I said to the panel last week, we're going to have a lot of fun this season. We're just getting warmed up. Got a lot of good discussions going to be coming our way. And we want you to certainly reach out to me, and I'll provide you at the end of the show how you can do that if you want to throw some questions to the panel and get us to see if we can help you with your game this season. But in the meantime, I'm going to take a quick commercial break. I'm going to let these guys go. And when I come back, I'm going to be kicking off this season's travel segment and with my good friend, co-host and travel expert, Robert Kaufman. I'll be right back.
Improve your putting with the Alignment Ball Marker, a revolutionary new in-game putting alignment tool and ball marker. Its patented design allows you to read your putt and adjust your alignment at the same time by using your putter, which improves your accuracy and makes the process of putting faster. 100% legal according to the USGA, by their definition, permitted under the rules of golf. Winner of Best New Product at the PGA Show and only $9.99 on Amazon. And it's also completely customizable for any golf event or as a promotional giveaway. Order at alignmentballmark.com.
All right, welcome back to Golf Talk Live. It's time to bring on tonight's special travel guest. First up, of course, is my good friend and travel expert and co-host, Robert Kaufman. Robert is an award-winning photographer, a golf and travel writer, golf media consultant. He's worked with a number of great publications such as Troon Golf and Travel Magazine, PGA Magazine, and of course, Golf Tips Magazine, along with a host of others. If you want to see more of his great work, you can visit his website, pictureperfect.com. Our special travel guest tonight is from Golfbreaks by PGA Tour, Jake Browning Perry. He's originally from Chelsea, Michigan, and Jake got introduced to golf growing up as a kid, working at a number of golf courses during the summer, cleaning everything from cleaning carts, clubs, carrying bags, you name it. He's pretty much done it. 2020 was really where he started to get into the game and consistently playing, finding his passion for golf. And after playing for, he said, about 5 years, he's whittled himself down to roughly a 15 handicap. But he says one of his specialties at Golfbreaks is sending his North American customers to Mexico and the Caribbean destinations to play some great golf. So, guys, welcome to tonight's special travel segment here on Golf Talk Live.
Oh, good. Great to be here. Good to see you, Jake. Nice on this first day of spring. It's appropriate we talk about spring golf travel, huh? How about that?
Now's the time.
All right, Robert, I'm going to hand the mic, as it were, over to you. I know you've got some great questions as the co-host here for this travel segment. So I'm going to let you go, and then you just let me know when you want me to say a few words, and I'll be right back. So I'm going to excuse myself and sit backstage and have a drink, and I'll join you guys in a little bit.
Save some for us, Ted. All right, here we are. Jake, you good?
Yes, sir. How about you?
Okay, I'm all good, yeah.
Right.
As I mentioned earlier, the sun's come back out. We're starting to warm up for a few days, but who knows? It's been a topsy-turvy season with rains, and I'm sure you guys experience that as well, so we're no different out here. So, anyway, just wanted to kind of get right into what you guys do with Golfbreaks. So you are the official tour provider, or travel provider, excuse me, for the PGA Tour. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we're the exclusive travel partner of the PGA Tour that began back in 2019. So the rest is history.
Right. So by being that official, with the PGA Tour, does that provide your clients with access to all the tour tournament event venues?
Yeah, certainly. A lot of the TPC venues like TPC Sawgrass, TPC Scottsdale, early access to the Players Championship, Waste Management, and many other tournaments as well that you see on TV that they want to attend, or even add in some golf along the way as well. But yeah.
Right. All right. So what are some of the top tier destinations we're looking at right now for what you're offering in the spring?
Yeah, so for spring destinations, especially for people that are coming from the Northeast, Midwest, people that quite aren't in the golf season quite yet in their hometowns, they're looking to get away. Heading out to Scottsdale, Arizona, that's a big one, especially this time of the year too, where you're going to have a lot of sunshine, guaranteed weather, 70s, 80 degree days each year, or each day,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Right.
And then also, down in Florida where you'll have obviously warm weather and things like that as well. But yeah, typically we see a lot of Arizona and Florida travel this time of the year.
Yeah. Scottsdale and Florida, as you mentioned, are they getting into that shoulder season where, people might be able to find some pretty good package deals?
Yeah, it's almost that time. Still right now, we're kind of towards the end of peak season. Looking at Scottsdale, for example, you'll start to run into those shoulder season rates, so where the rates start to drop off. Typically the second part of April, towards the end of April, beginning of May, right before it gets to be, blistering hot out there, where
Right.
you'll start to see the rates for golf and accommodations drop. So yeah, roughly within that, probably the last week of April, first part of May.
Yeah. How far when you start getting into that time period of the year, do the rates start dropping considerably?
I would say so, yeah. So, with the shoulder season, you can probably expect, one of your top tier courses, let's say like Wico Paul Golf Club or like True
Yeah.
North that are out there in Scottsdale, Arizona, of where you're going to start to see probably about $100 drop in price, and then even more so once you hit roughly June 1st. So, again, if people are wanting to go out there of where they're not looking to play in 15 degree heat, but also still have a nice day of where it's still, very manageable to go out and play golf, of where they're fine with still playing and paying, for a couple $100 around. Now is definitely the time here within the next month and a half or so of where you're going to start to see those rates drop off.
Right. So kind of along that line, the Wicopas and the TPCs. Well, what are some of the courses that really won't break the bank, so to speak? Because you start paying upwards of $200, $300, $400
Yeah.
for some of those courses. That doesn't that doesn't bode well for a lot of golf travelers, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the word that comes to mind is value, right? And
Right.
looking at a course of where that has a ton of value of best bang for your buck, for example, or another word, hidden gem, right? Of where, you have a great quality golf course, but not at that same price. I mean, there's a ton of those out there in Scottsdale because everybody does want to go play TPC Scottsdale. Everybody wants to go play Greyhawk, True North, all those courses, right? But I mean, there's a lot of them like Eagle Mountain, for example, that's out there. It's incredible, which is roughly about 40 minutes or so south of Scottsdale. And McDowell Mountain's another one too. Now, if you're shifting gears and looking into Florida, there's a bunch of those down there as well. So I think in a way, when you're looking at these golf courses, it's not the big names, right? Of course, everybody wants to go and play those because half the time they want to say that they played it, right?
Right.
But
Right.
again, when you're looking at these different golf courses out there, the ones that still have 4 or 5 star reviews that are a fraction of the price are going to be ones that you definitely want to tick off your list when you're doing a spring trip.
Yeah. Well, I was actually just recently down in Scottsdale area, actually Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're familiar with Las Sendas Golf Club. Yeah, so I got to play that. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I've played Wekopah, TPC, all those courses, and of course they're great out in the desert.
Definitely.
Las Sendas was a pretty good challenge, and I've never, I mean, I would have been hard pressed to find faster greens anywhere. I mean, it was in prime condition. I mean, this is their prime season, obviously, but
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in great shape. So courses like that really aren't on the radar are a great find and at a much lesser price. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely.
What about along the same lines in Florida? What do you guys offer in terms of, under the radar, so to speak?
Yeah, under the radar. I mean, if you're looking at value again, Orlando is going to be the best place to do that, right? Central Florida for sure, and especially when you have a golf course every mile down the road. Again, you have Bay Hill that's out there. Obviously, probably one of the more well-known golf courses in that area. But then, like, you take a look at like Celebration Golf Club is always a fan favorite out there. Again, isn't going to exceed really anything more than $200 really any time of the year. It's definitely a solid golf course in my opinion, and as well as many others as well. So that would be one. Orange County National Golf Courses too, that hosted like one of the very first live events at both Crooked Cat and then Panther Lake. Those are also some great tracks to play again too. Maybe not so much of a hidden gem, but again, one that doesn't really exceed more than $150 to $200 per round. Those, and then there's also Southern Dunes Golf Club too, which is kind of off the beaten path, which again, since it's removed away from the main Disney and Orlando area, which is probably why the price tag tends to be a bit better, but still will be, a great round of golf to play at a fraction of the price.
Yeah. So when it comes to planning a trip, what are, maybe give me like 2 or 3 of the best golf tips you can provide for a traveler, maybe not all that familiar, maybe hasn't taken many trips in the past, so he's not used to, packing a bag, what clubs to take, what time of year to go. What should they be looking for?
So I would say, 1, be open-minded. 2, because again, I think people are so set on one certain destination and they think like that's going to be the best golf destination that they can find, when in reality, there's obviously so many other ones too. Flexibility in dates is a big one too. Then that way you can look to travel in the shoulder seasons where you're not, where you're not paying the peak season rates to go out there and play those golf courses. But if you still want to play a really good round of golf, travel in the shoulder seasons, having the flexibility in your dates. So open-minded, having the flexibility in your dates. And then I would also say, as far as, also being open to like a lot of people that come to us, they want to have golf on property, which I get the convenience side of things too, but typically you're going to be paying more for that versus if you want to do a short little area tour of these golf courses that are 5, 10, 15 minutes down the road. That's it's going to give you more variety to choose from too. So then that way you're not playing the same resort course every day or the same 2 or 3 courses throughout your trip, right? Where you're going to have more variety to choose from. So that's a big one. And I would also say too, if you are open to traveling in the low season, where again, it's typically, going to be the hottest and one where you can certainly dodge the maintenance dates and cart path only restrictions and things like that, where the golf courses are still in, honestly, pretty solid shape, but then you can even pay less for that as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of things too, but those are typically one of the first things that I, recommend to anybody that is looking to take a golf trip.
Yeah. Now, when obviously you deal with all kinds of size groups, it could be 4 guys to 8 guys to 50 guys or whatever it might be,
Yeah.
combination, families. I mean, and you have to allow for different, what should I say, styles of play, personalities, things to do. I mean, all that stuff. I mean, you almost become like a little babysitter, huh? Trying to keep all these folks in line because not everybody wants to do the same thing. And maybe not everyone will want to play golf every day. They want to go off and, see some sights or take a spa or just do nothing. How does that play into the planning?
Oftentimes can be probably the biggest hurdle, I will say. But typically that is left on the plate of the lead organizer to deal with. So with us to an extent, yes, but I always, give credit to the lead organizers of a bachelor trip or, of a annual golf trip, right? Of where, they have to kind of deal with the other guys and their schedules and their dates. And I can't do this date. I don't want to play this course. I don't want to stay at this hotel and all of that as well. Then obviously that's all fed back to me as well as alternative options. Again, it can kind of vary too, right? Because again, we do cater from a solo traveler all the way up to whatever, right? So we get all different types of walks of life, for lack of a better term. But again, I always say that target the guys or girls in your group that are confirmed that definitely want to do this, right? They want to go out somewhere. It doesn't really matter where it has to be, right? But they want to go on a golf trip. They want to play golf. They're there for that purpose, right? And then you can kind of start to feed in the other people that are kind of on the fence and have other obligations or whatever it may be. So that's typically how I approach it, especially with my big groups too. Typically it's guys golf trips that have been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years that typically have a pretty solid grasp on their group. All right, guys, we need to do this. We need to go here. Here's the payment dates. Here's this. And it tends to be much more organized. But for the groups that are kind of all over the place, it's a matter of really feeling out, what the priority of the group is. To your point, is it playing golf every day? Is it playing 36 holes every day? Is it playing golf every other day or whatever it may be?
Right. Now, what happens when you start getting into the international destinations? I mean, are there any other, for lack of better words, complications that arise, in terms of travel and, putting the package together? Or is it pretty much kind of a cookie cutter type of, formula that you guys have in terms of getting your groups there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it's really any different, to be honest with you. It's pretty much the same because we have the established relationships with the golf courses, with the hotels, with the transportation providers. Everything's all set up for them ahead of time too. So it's honestly a pretty well-oiled machine. Really, I mean, again, obviously it's a very different territory, but at the end of the day, it's not much different than staying stateside either.
Right. Just as long as they have a passport, right?
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. Which I'm sure you've run into because, there's been a lot of people that I know that get passports expired or don't have enough time to, get a new one. So there goes the trip. So.
Yeah.
So, little problems like that we don't think of ahead. But so your specialty really, you like to cater in Caribbean, Mexico. Is that what I understand? That
correct.
You know those areas pretty well. What's hot right now?
Right now, I would say probably the Dominican Republic. A lot of great golf courses out there. Teeth of the Dog being the number one course in the Caribbean is in the Dominican Republic. Unfortunately, it's being renovated as of right now and it's set to open up back in 2020 or December of 2025. So here this winter. But again, I mean, outside of that, you still have Corrales, La Cana, Punta Espada. We actually just did a video with Bob Does Sports and then went out and said there are so many great golf courses just in the Dominican Republic. But again, for most people that are coming from the Northeast, Southeast, it's a quick flight down to the Dominican. And even a lot of people from Canada as well, looking to get out to the Dominican Republic because again, it's warm temperatures, tropical climates, guaranteed sunshine, and some of the best golf courses that you could ever play, to be honest.
Yeah. Is that where you've spent most of your time, golf traveling?
Yeah, I did a 6-day trip out there and got to play all those golf courses, basically from Bavaro to Punta Cana and then over there at Casa de Campo. And some of my favorites, my number one favorite golf course I've ever played is Corrales. And the PGA Tour plays it typically, I think it's the week after the Masters every year. And it's honestly a life-changing golf course. There's nothing like it. It's absolutely incredible.
So that's your number one, like Anywhere?
As of right now, I'm actually set to do a Scotland trip here next month. So I got a
Nice.
pretty solid itinerary coming up. But yeah, for me, I've always had a passion for the tropical climates and kind of more of your destination golf. And also, you'll find that some of the best golf courses in the world are in Mexico and in the Caribbean as well. But just having the blue water, the warm temperatures, the sunshine, I love that. Shorts, polo versus, bundled up in a windbreaker and pants and winter hat and all that. So
Yeah. For you East Coast people, I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what about in Mexico? You mentioned that you talked about the Caribbean, but what's down in Mexico that's pretty strong right now?
Right now, I would definitely say Cabo San Lucas. Some of the best golf too out there. Quivira Golf Club. It's in the world top 100 best golf courses here at the moment. Jack Nicklaus designed golf course. It's an incredible course. Looking to get out there here this summer, and it's just everything that I've studied about it, and it's an absolutely incredible golf course, and people are dying to play it, and it's getting booked up pretty far in advance now compared to previous years. But it's one that people need to go out and play if they're going to Cabo. That's a must play. So.
Yeah. I fortunately, I had an opportunity to play it not too long after it opened, and it's something, pretty something. It's amazing, especially coming from a place like California where you can't. I mean, the whole coastline is closed. You couldn't build anything like what they did down in Mexico. Not a chance. I mean, you can almost right off the tee box step into the water, and that would never happen here. So it's pretty special. Yeah. There's another one down there that I'm a little curious about. You might know something. Is Solmar
Golf Links. Yeah, it used to
Tell
be
me about
named Rancho San Lucas, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. That's honestly probably our second best golf course that we offer in that area. I know people are looking to get out to play Diamante, and there's a whole way you can get onto that, but we unfortunately don't work with them. Yeah, we have Quivira, and then Solmar is a close second, and definitely is one that I'm looking to play here in a couple of months as well when we go out and play Quivira. Yeah, anybody that wants to play championship golf, it's right up there as well. 18 holes. It's an absolutely beautiful golf course. I believe it's also all inclusive as well. So you have like your food and drinks and stuff included out there. Very similar to how you have or how Quivira has it set up as well. But a little bit further west than what Quivira is. But again, it's about 20-25 minutes from Cabo.
Yeah. What kind of rates are we looking at for, a place like Quivira or Solmar?
Yeah, so
those are the high-end ones.
Yeah, they definitely are. Right now, peak season-wise, Quivira, you're looking at roughly about $460, $470-ish, right in that price range. Solmar is actually a little bit more. It's roughly about $480, $490, just shy of $500 around to play it. But still, when you talk about a bucket list golf course, you look at Pebble Beach, you look at TPC Sawgrass that are in the 700s, those are just a great value. And again, they're some of the best golf courses you can play in the world.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you sound like you have a couple destinations lined up. You got your travel all set for a few months. Pretty nice.
Yeah.
Scotland and then down to Mexico,
Cabo,
maybe.
Not too far. Yeah, too far after. So it's going to be a nice little spring and summer here.
Good for you. Good. So Ted, come on back.
Well, I've been listening and taking it all in.
You're salivating?
Yeah, and salivating on that. But I just want to give the quick. Now, we're going to have a link I'm going to have up on golftipsmag.com shortly that you guys are going to provide. But in the meantime, for those of you that want to take a look and kind of surf around a little bit, if you go to golfbreaks.com is their website, you can take a look at some of the properties that they're talking about here, not only tonight, but others as well. And then we'll have a special link and promo put up on golftipsmag.com here shortly that you can go in and maybe make your bucket list trip in the next little bit. But Jake, I want to thank you very much for joining us as our special travel guest tonight. Robert, as always, did a great job throwing those questions and keeping Jake on his toes. But this is a kickoff for our travel segment, and I'm really excited to help the folks find a place to go and play. So you guys just hold tight for a quick second, and I'm going to go to take another short break to hear from one of our sponsors, brushtee.com. And when I return, I'll be joined by the president and CEO of the National Golf Foundation, Greg Nathan. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. My special guest this evening is an industry leader and the president CEO of National Golf Foundation. Here's a little bit more about tonight's featured guest. Greg is currently the president and CEO, as I mentioned, of the National Golf Foundation, ascending to the role in 2024, succeeding longtime leader Joe Betitz. After 4 decades of running the 89-year organization that's best known as a golf's official information resource, objectively measuring and reporting the industry's vital signs to golf business leaders. Before becoming the CEO, Nathan was the chief business officer for the NGF for 17 years. And before that, he was with Golf Magazine, Golf.com, and the Sports Illustrated, Golf Group as director of client marketing. Before his career in the golf industry, Nathan worked in the advertising business in New York for a decade, developing brand strategy and promoting advertising for brands such as Chase, MasterCard, UPS, Bear Stearns, and many, many others. Greg, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Thanks, Ted. Delighted to be with you.
All right, I appreciate it. So what I wanted to do very quickly, I mean, I'm very familiar with NGF. Obviously, you've been there for many years. But for the viewers that are going to be tuning in tonight, maybe you could just kind of give a little bit of an overview of what the National Golf Foundation is, sort of how it came about, and really sort of how it's impacted the industry on so many levels.
Thanks, Ted. Of course, happy to do that. So the NGF is actually more than meets the eye, but the way that most people know us is as the official reporter on the state of the golf industry. In a way, we are the reporter on the golf economy's vital signs. And that part of our business is a C6 trade association. So you could say that we are the trade association for every golf-related business. And then underneath that, we have a wholly owned subsidiary, NGFC, where we do quite a bit of private research, marketing, and consulting work for some of the leading companies and organizations in golf. If you're a golf crazy lunatic like me, you're a very lucky person to spend your life doing this. A little bit on the history, since you asked. 1936. So wow. in the 1920s, NGF's co-founders, 2 brothers from Chicago, Herb and Joe Graffis. First, a little bit on Herb. So Herb, if you think about all the amazing journalists that have ever penned a word on golf, like Herbert, Warren, Wind, so many more that are etched in the history of golf. Herb Graffis was the first journalist inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 1977. Partially because he founded the Golf Writers Association, he helped found the Superintendents Association, and he founded the NGF. Now, why did he do that? Well, he and his brother had the vision in the 1980s when golf was purely a private game in America. Right. Like you think about the Gilded Age and the Vanderbilts and J. Pierpont Morgan, who started all the Golden Age clubs. They looked at golf and they said, you know what, this is going to be big business in America. Golf is going to be part of the American dream. And because, you could think about people that who have vision for things and they're just yapping. Right. But these guys are journalists, so they actually had the means and the platform to promote the game. And so they created the first national publication for the trade called Golfdom. There's still a magazine called Golfdom. It's not the same thing, but Golfdom was founded in 1927, about 300 for people who worked in golf. And then in 1933, they founded a publication called Golfing, which was the first national publication for golfers, like to help people understand how to play and everything about it to promote it. So the NGF was formed coming out of the Great Depression because using round numbers, Ted, if you had 5,000 golf courses in America going into the Great Depression, nobody knew exactly how many were still left coming out. Right. And guess what? There was no worldwide golf or PGA Tour superstore back then. Everything was sold at the golf course. Right. So the golf companies needed to know, club and ball companies needed to know where they could sell their products. So one of the first jobs the NGF, Herb and Joe ever did was to inventory the nation's golf courses. And that, of course, is still something that the NGF does to this day. And that has huge impacts on how we see the supply side of the golf economy and how we track it. The NGF has evolved over time to be many things. And so there's quite a series of evolutions between when Herb and Joe started the organization and where we are today with what I described, trade association for every golf-related business. And we're the leading private research consulting marketing firm for the industry.
Wow. And so, I mean, you're providing a myriad of information to a lot of different areas of the golf industry, not just, as you said, for the golf courses or clubs, but to the businesses, companies like TaylorMade, Titleist, you name it. They're looking at that information as well, and those statistics to basically decide where the industry is shifting, where it's obviously they know where it's come from, but where is it moving in future? So it brings me to this next question. When you sort of touched on this, when you look at golf's narrative and perceptions, how have they changed, and how has participation evolved in the last several years? How is the industry moving, and where is it going?
It's really an incredibly dynamic time in golf, Ted. And, I can be the master of obvious at times if necessary. I've been here 18 years. I do a lot of public speaking, and there's a phrase that I'll use generally, which is golf moves glacially. But in certain ways, the curve has really steepened in terms of how participation has changed over the past 10 years. And really that has to do with the introduction and flourishing of off-course forms of golf. So if you think now, let's see, I'll throw the first of what I'm sure will be many statistics out today. Total off-course participation is about 36 million.
Wow.
Now, so in 2022, that's the first year that off course passed on course. And as long as they continue to build more and more facilities, and this is the way that NGF draws the line, facilities where you can hit a real ball with a real club with a full swing. Mm-hmm. Now, why does the NGF care? That it's not putting necessarily, or we measure putt, we measure golf participation in video games, but that 36 million number has to do with a real ball, real club, full swing, because if you do that, you can get golf's drug. And golf's drug, Joe Bettis gets the credit for shot euphoria. Because shot euphoria, that's what everybody needs in order to get hooked on this game. Back to off course. So the three ways that contribute to that 36 million are golf entertainment like Topgolf, driving range, whether it's traditional driving range or gamified range like, Top Tracer range, TrackMan range, in range, or screen golf. So those three ways to participate in this game are just growing like crazy. And so that does a couple of things. First of all, it puts a club in people's hands. There isn't a sport, activity, game in the world that wouldn't absolutely give their left pinky toe, if a game had a pinky toe, wouldn't give that to have 36 million people doing an activity that could be an on-ramp to that, traditional game, green grass. So the off course and the different ways that people participate in that, it's very different. It has a different look. It has a different feel. It's less serious. It's fewer orthodoxies. It's all about fun. This is fantastic for our game, and it's really changed the image. And then the other major influence that we've tracked in terms of how golf's image has changed has to do with social media. And, one only needs to look at a handful of golf-related accounts on Instagram to see, wow, that doesn't look like the Players' Championship that I just watched over the weekend. There's more people in that social media golf sphere that look like me.
Yes.
That prefer to dress like me, that maybe aren't such great golfers, but have something to say or have a particular angle. So the combination of off course and social have really made golf much, much more approachable. And, green grass still has a long way to go in terms of being more accommodating and less intimidating for novices and women and people of color. Golf does not, Ted, have a top of funnel problem. Okay. There's plenty of people, we study it. I'll spare the statistics for the moment. But let's just say there's over 20 million people in America who do not play green grass golf, who give the number one answer to how interested are you in playing golf on a golf course now? 22 million people give the number one answer. Very interested. Doesn't mean they'll act on it necessarily, but green grass golf has tons of prospects. And so that's why I bring that up, because any business that has tons of prospects and has these barriers to someone being able to get, you and I love this game. It's given us so much. It's given us careers.
Right.
Look at that. Now, aside from all the fun and the camaraderie and the health and the outdoor, everything that this game means to us, it's opening up.
When you look at it, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the biggest or more common comments, if you will, that I've heard over the years as an instructor, I've been teaching now for over 32 years. And a lot of people that have never played before said to me, you know, Ted, one of the things I always equated golf with is what I saw on TV. I never knew there was this other, you know, aspect of the game, like much like you're talking with social media and obviously the non-traditional avenues or access points like a Top Golf and you know the myriad of others that have been sprouting out over the last few years. And you mentioned something very interesting when you talked about demographics. We just went through a pandemic a few years ago. A lot of people never picked up a golf club in their life, suddenly found an opportunity just to get out of the house and find something to do, were introduced to the game. How has that helped? Obviously, it's helped the game, boosting up sales and revenues and things like that. But has that also helped tremendously to open up a whole different level of play that maybe was not there before? And if so, how has it impacted as we look, you know, a couple of years after the pandemic? How has it sort of resonated 2 or 3 years after?
Sure. So the pandemic has been an amazing catalyst for a lot of the growth that we're seeing. It's amazing what happens when your game ends up being essentially, for a period of time, the only outdoor recreation activity that is acceptable, let's say. And it's acceptable for a lot of great reasons. I mean, people were stir crazy, in desperate need of human contact. Maybe not touching, but human contact. So the pandemic reminded people all the intrinsic, wonderful values of this game that we love. A lot of the things that I just rattled off a minute ago: outdoors, health, competitiveness, therapy, socially, it's safe. And so the pandemic created a situation where a number of people, let's say there are tens of millions of lapsed golfers out there who, when golf was the only game in town, were reminded, hey, I'm going to go out and play. And they were reminded how great golf is for any time. But pandemic time, you know, was very particular. Now, the pandemic does not deserve credit for where we are today. We've seen multiple times in history where a lot of infrequent, less committed players came into the game. There's a whole Tiger bubble that we tracked, you know, in late 1990s, early 2000s. And when the recession came in 2007, 2008, a lot of those less frequent, less committed players, they left the game. They had to. You know, supporting their families is going to be more important.
Of course, yeah.
But today we have an entirely different dynamic relative to the stickiness of golf and the image of the game. You see tee sheets are more full probably than they've ever been. Golf course financial health is probably higher than it's ever been. And that's because people are enjoying the activity, and the pandemic doesn't get credit for that. It's a credit as a catalyst is what I would say. And then golf has ridden this wave since then. And in many ways, it's a confluence of a lot of the things we've already talked about.
Do you also think that when you look at, I mean, you see the statistics all the time. Do you see, I remember a few years ago, you guys come out, and I don't, going from memory here, but there was a huge uptick in particularly young women coming into the game. Some of that is obviously with the sort of spurt growth, if you will, with the LPGA, and then ultimately some of the feeder tours, Epson and so on, others drawing more of a youthful. But are you still seeing that? In fact, I think at one time you guys reported that was the biggest increase, that demographic. More, and that didn't mean that was the biggest number of players overall, but that was the biggest growth spurt for a number of it. Are you still seeing that trend, or is it sort of leveled off, or where is it happening now? Where does it fit in now?
We're still seeing it, Ted. I'm looking at a figure right here so juniors or youth golfers, which definition wise is age 6 to 17 in NGF definition. Players of that age, and I'm talking about green grass, are up 48% since 2019. You know, since the pre-pandemic year, 2019. So it's still pretty substantial. But just, you know, there's always going to be volatility in national research from year to year. But there's a number of things that we're looking at right now that are big green arrows pointing up. And that's a big one. 48% up
That's
in
huge.
juniors since 2019. And that's one of the fun things about being at the NGF right now, Ted, is we're very popular.
Yeah.
The news isn't always good.
Right.
Look, the business leaders in golf who rely upon what we do, they want the unvarnished truth. They do want, they got to run a business. There's organizations in the sport that don't rely on recreational golf for their revenues. Of course, they want the news on golf to always be good.
Of course.
Okay? And while we are very involved and have wonderful partnerships with those who deliver the fantastic professional and elite competitive product, we're very focused on the recreational game. And, the professional game and what people see on TV definitely has a positive influence. But, when I look down the list of the numbers that we look at, I mean, there's just so many green arrows pointing up right now that we don't really see anything other than a geopolitical event, a recession. Those things we can't control, and they will affect every form of recreation, every way that we spend money. So, we like to say, Ted, we don't have all the answers, but we do have almost all the questions. And the question that we get all the time is, okay, is this sustainable? And so the answer, the data shows us that it is. You never know what can derail it, but the same way that I said golf changes glacially, generally it would change glacially going both ways.
Let me ask you, as you look at the golf industry as an industry, how big is, I mean, you've thrown out some numbers, 36 million, but as you compare it to other industries, how big is golf? How do you compare it to other industries?
So we executed the National Economic Impact Study for the American Golf Industry Coalition back in 2022, and $102 billion. Now, in the publication, it mentions a couple of industries for comparison purposes, like the global running shoe market. And by the way, that $102 billion is only U.S. Okay, the global running shoe market is about $48 billion. And just coming on to this program, ski and snowboard is about $6 billion. Tennis is between $5 and $6 billion. It just shows this amazing breadth, how wide and deep golf goes. That's one of the most interesting things about my job and what we do, Ted, is that we're the only organization in golf that serves every vertical. And only when I joined NGF 18 years ago did I have any real understanding. It's like, okay, that means chemical companies, mowing companies, irrigation, golf cars, utility vehicles, the batteries that go in golf cars, software that runs golf courses or retail stores, golf course owners and operators, of course, the sexy stuff like clubs and balls and shoes and apparel. So there are so many different categories, and we're 25 employees in Jupiter, Florida, and we got to figure out how to have data that serves the business leaders in all these categories. And that's one of the toughest things that we have to do as an organization, is figure out, all right, what are we going to study that serves the greater good of the golf business economy, that $102 billion industry. So it's funny, we're like a $7 million organization supporting a $102 billion industry. So
that's pretty good. That's good. Let me ask you something, Greg, just going back to demographics for a second. We talked briefly about sort of the influx of young women, particularly, and obviously older women are coming back to the game, or some coming in for the first time, maybe because their partner or spouse has been playing and they want to, feel like they're participating in something together. But what about some of the traditional demographics, like the African-American community and some of the less represented? Are you seeing those numbers starting to uptick? Maybe obviously not as well as some of the others right now, but have you noticed that generally moving in that green arrow direction as well? And what are some of the hurdles that the industry still needs to sort of smoothing out in order to even open that up further? What are your thoughts here?
Sure. Well, first of all, we're at the high water mark in measured history for the percent of greengrass golfers represented by women and the percent of greengrass golfers represented by people of color. They're both up in like the high 20s now. I can pull that up, but it's really great to see the high water mark. So I think right now we're at 25% of all greengrass golfers, non-white, and 28% female. And that's up from 21% around 1990. So there really are some quality numbers from different demographics right now.
Now,
are we back?
Obviously, yeah, we are. Yeah, you cut out there for just a second, but I think we're good now. So when we're talking about courses, particular, not necessarily private clubs, but courses in particular, have you noticed, again, based on the information that you're able to put out through the industry, have you seen them starting to pivot in a different direction? Let's forget the Top Golf. Let's forget the non-traditional opportunities that are out there now. Are you seeing them having to pivot or change in order to meet this new climate of golfers coming in? What are some of the changes that you've noticed through the industry?
I mean, the biggest change that the greengrass owners and operators have had to deal with is the double-edged sword, which is tee sheets are at a higher level of capacity. Last time we measured public golf courses in America were, when we asked them basically we measured what percent are at or near capacity. And capacity, like a hotel, doesn't mean 100% full. It means at a level where your product can be still delivered in a quality way. So public golf courses, about 55 to 60% are at or near capacity. And in the case of private, we're in the 75, 77 range. So that's the number one adjustment. Okay, sure. It's just dealing with the balance of supply and demand, which in their case means, those who operate golf courses are under more stress than they usually are, but they're making more money. They're more financially healthy, which allows them to to hire more people ideally, or pay, the rising wages that folks have had to. It's very competitive out there. You need not look further than like the food service industry and waiters and waitresses, et cetera. But the fact that golf courses are financially healthy means they can invest. They can invest in conditions. They can invest in people. They can invest in equipment. And that's very helpful for the industry at large. If you think about all those segments, look, nothing happens in recreational golf unless someone pays a greens fee. Someone's got to show up. Someone's got to show up and pay a greens fee. And then secondarily to the consumer support of rounds played and greens fees paid is, okay, what can the golf course do with that money? Now, I joke when I stand on stage talking to groups of owners and operators, I say, you know what, when you all wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you are very smart and very handsome or very beautiful, because business is booming. It's been booming, but that does obscure certain things that golf, of course needs to improve. And I hate to sound like a broken record because I do talk about this all the time, but you will hear, Ted, you have heard, what are those three things that everybody says holds greengrass golf back from growing? It takes too long, it costs too much, and it's too hard. Well, I'm here to tell you that even though those things are real, those are not the real reasons. The number one reason that golf doesn't grow when we're in that situation is fear of embarrassment. It's intimidation. It's the feeling of discomfort, because golf can be a difficult environment for a novice or a woman or a person of color. And so this is the time when business is good, that course owners and operators who do an amazing job, but they know it too, that they could do more to understand, to reflect that they're in the hospitality business at a higher level. Golf has a tendency of becoming transactional. How many times, Ted, have you had people on the show that said golf's a relationship business?
A lot.
But yet at the golf course level or the golf retail level, it's a people business. And if you walk into a golf shop, or if at a golf course or anywhere else, you walk in and they're going to say, can I help you with something? Are you looking for something?
Right.
What do you need?
Right.
Well, how about asking me about my game?
Right.
How about getting to know me a little bit so that you can, how am I going to take care of you? So there's still, sometimes I feel like I repeat myself a lot, but until the golf course becomes a really welcoming, a really welcoming place, I'll probably keep saying it.
Yeah, you've hit it right on the nail, right on the head, because I know particularly, I'll single out a lot of our female golfers. I've worked with a number over the years, and they said the number one fear for them is feeling embarrassed, because especially if they've never played before and it's their first time or the first, season out there, and they don't want to look foolish, number one, in front of everybody, and they want to, understand the game. And if they haven't been taught and it's not so much the playing the game, it's just understanding how the game works and what's the proper etiquette when you come up to the golf. Do I just, do I set my bag on the curb or do I take it somewhere? What do I do? What are the steps that I need to do? And of course, more and more great professionals from the LPGA teaching side of things are doing a great job in really unpacking that for them. One of the things that, I see as well is I think more and more courses have to really start, and this is going to lead into my next question, but have to really start reaching out into their communities. I know there's a lot of courses around, but for instance, a lot of municipalities are wanting to upgrade some of the municipal courses maybe. So there's a lot of renovations, that are currently being made, some that maybe need to be made. Are you able to help them in that process as well? How does the NGF partner with municipalities that want to maybe invest money into municipal course and make it more accessible to the general public as opposed to other options? Do you guys work and partner with a lot of the municipalities in doing that?
We do. We work with every type of golf course, every category. I think a lot of people, Ted, would be surprised to hear that we're at the high water mark in U.S. history for the number of municipal golf facilities. And they have a lot of the same situations that I just described with full tee sheets. And, it's more difficult to keep courses in shape when you have that amount of play. But there's definitely, there's a lot more positivity in communities around golf since the pandemic. And because look, a municipal golf course is often one of the only forms of recreation that they deliver to the community that makes money. But there have been times, look, the park doesn't usually make that much money. The jungle gym and
right.
The pool is going to make money from the passes, but there certainly have been times, Ted, where communities and a municipal enterprise fund has had to support and subsidize the golf course. That's less likely to be the case right now. And it's such an important, as the world gets tighter and tighter, more people in urban areas, golf courses remain a really important oasis of green space and a place for community and recreation and making money. And so we've been doing private consulting in GFC. We've been doing private consulting for municipalities and been the clear leader in that space for decades. But it's not the only, that's one category that we work in. And we literally wrote the book on how to build a municipal golf course and how to operate one.
Yeah. And that's really, that's again, a great point that you bring up, because I've had a group on a while ago. Two of them were attorneys that work in that field that help with golf course development. And the other one was somebody that's been in the golf business for years. And they said the number one problem that they see with a lot of the new golf developments, and this is going back a few years now, but that they said that they sort of rush through the process. In other words, they're focusing so much, especially if it's a golf community where you've got housing projects going on, you've got all kinds of things. They put this beautiful golf course in there, but they don't really factor in some of the other aspects and ultimately end up losing money. And it becomes more of a money pit than really a money revenue generator. And a lot of it's just, again, wishful thinking on the developer's part. Let's throw a big golf course or two in this huge development. And it's really becomes more about the house sales and not so much about really providing a great service. Sometimes these municipal courses that have been around for years, or some of them that are popping up now. I know in Atlanta, Bobby Jones Links has worked on one I'm sure you're very familiar with. I had them on actually not too long ago talking about, that's one of the other reasons I want to bring that up. They're very, very proud of that particular project and excited about that. And I think you're starting to see more and more municipalities. I want to give you, before we move into giving you an opportunity to talk about the future of the game, I want to give you a few moments to talk about Joe Bettis. As I understand, he was a mentor of yours. Obviously, you moved into his position, and I just want you to maybe share some things. What were some important lessons that you learned while you were working alongside Joe for many years?
Joe, I couldn't ask for a better mentor. Joe's been absolutely amazing. I have so many funny stories, like from when I was interviewing with him. And it's so interesting to think back to those conversations as you spend 18 years really closely working with someone, to spend 18 years and think back to those moments of that character. And character is a great word. Joe Bettis, I like to say, is a unicorn. See, of course, he's Dr. Bettis. He has a PhD. Mm-hmm. He's really a brilliant man. And just the fact with the unicorn status is that most people who have that kind of intellect to be able to do what he did here at the NGF for 40 years, and his handle on statistics and human nature and psychology, is he's a great speaker. He's a good salesman. He's highly ethical. He's a great friend. So it's like you don't always see that total package. So, learning from basically, Ted, I've been getting paid for 18 years to get an education from Joe Bettis. And look, now it's my job to pay that back. And leading this organization that's, been around for 88 years, 89 years, which I've grown to love and respect the history of what we've done. And now I'm in a position to help shape what we do in the future. And what I love about the NGF's history is that we've really changed. And we've always changed based on what the industry needed most at a given time. I mean, here's a quick funny story that really only the people who've spent time with us would know.
Right.
Is in the 90s, during World War II, most of the rubber in America, the rubber resources in America, they went to the war effort. So if golf was going to be played, there wasn't any rubber around to make new golf balls. So the NGF created a golf ball reconditioning program and worked with golf facilities and golf professionals so that people could bring in used golf balls and they'd be reconditioned and then go back into the market so people could play golf. That wouldn't be something that anyone would think that the NGF had ever did. It's just one example of okay, this is what the industry needs. If golf is going to be played, we need rubber resources. Well, there's no rubber resources, so we're going to do this.
That's incredible.
So I don't expect that we're going to be in that scenario again, but that's the hallmark. A few of the core values of the NGF is really that, it's not about us. It's about the business at large. And it's about the individual businesses that we serve. It's their success before our own. Credibility and trust are our greatest assets. And, if I have to spend every NGF dollar to protect that, then that's what I do. But fortunately, we're involved in a lot of things that help the industry at large and then help individual golf businesses. I do want to say something about that subject earlier, which was about golf takes too long and costs too much and it's too hard.
Right.
So if you think about anybody who's listening to this and you and me, we prioritize things in our lives that are fun.
Mm-hmm.
We do it with money and we do it with time. And yes, this is friggin' hard,
Yep.
But that's part of the attractiveness and the appeal of golf. It's one of the reasons less than 10% of people play golf. It's because it's not for everybody. But that's where, I'm preempting your question about the future. But that's the future. The future is that more and more people understand that golf is about fun. And if you want to tee the ball up in the middle of the fairway because it makes you more likely you're going to get shot euphoria, do it. You want to throw, you don't want to hit a bunker shot, throw it out.
Yeah.
It's a very small percentage of people who play for competition. And those who do, then that's what they should do. The same way that I'm not going to sit here and dictate or preach is a better word of what certain golf courses should do with their dress code or their orthodoxies. What golf is a variety of different products served up. So Seminole, 8 miles down US 1 from here, do they need to change significantly? Probably not. They can deliver the traditional golf experience because that's what the people want. But if you're at another type of golf course, a public golf course of different varieties, you can create your own flavor of fun. And this might surprise you that only about 16%, 17% of the 14,000 green grass golf facilities in America are run by a management company. So the management companies, like the Corscos out in California, or the Troons or Kempers, Touchstones, etc. They do a terrific job. They help their clients, but across the board, everyone could be better, because this is about fun, and that's what keeps people coming back. That's what puts smiles on people's faces. That's good for the business.
Yeah, and that was something that I know through teaching over the years. There was a period of time, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to preface this as well. When we talk about things like technology and that, and I'm talking about technology in teaching, has been a great asset to many pros. But there was a period of time, I think, especially in the earlier days, when you had things like the TrackMan and all of these things coming out, where I think there was a lot of excitement, everybody was jazzed up. And I think a lot of pros kind of got lost in the weeds with teaching. And what I mean by that is they were teaching more of the technology to the average golfer instead of using it as a resource to better help the golfers. And I'm not trying to be critical of that, but I think that was just we got excited. We got jazzed up. We were excited about all this technology. Look at the numbers. It's like a slot machine. The wheels are turning. What data can we churn out? But what happened was, from the golfer's perspective, it overcomplicated an already difficult game. And so a lot of people got out. To go on to a point you said earlier about how there were a lot of golfers, prior to the pandemic, that kind of shoved the golf aside. I'm a little bit older, maybe I'm not going to play as much, or it's just too difficult. Decided, what? I got nothing else to do. I might as well. I've got my sticks in the garage. I'm going to go back out and start playing. So they got a second wind. And I think the golf industry, and you could certainly probably speak to this better than me, but from a statistical standpoint, but I think that the pros kind of got it. I think they realized that, again, the numbers are important, but at the same time, you're not teaching the numbers, you're teaching the student. And if you're looking down at a monitor all the time and you're not really making that contact with your student, they're just, having a conversation with themselves. And so I think that's where I see the future of the game is that F word, that fun. I think as golf becomes more fun with not just the traditional green grass environment, but all of these other aspects of golf, introducing people to the game, helping them aspire to whatever level they want to be, I think you're going to see more. You're going to see even more green arrows pointing up even further, I think. What are your thoughts there as you see the future of the game?
I joke about this too, Ted. Most golfers suck.
That's true.
And it's a virtual guarantee. That's the big myth, is that, people who don't play, or people who play a little bit, a lot of folks get in their head that golfers are good. And we say that we play golf in spite of our ability, not because of it. And look, is it more fun to play good golf? You bet it is.
Of course.
Is it more fun to get shot euphoria more often? Absolutely. And I like what you said. I think there's certainly a place for data-driven instruction.
Yeah.
Golf Tech, for example, has really pioneered that. Done a terrific job to take the mythical voodoo, sort of, and break it down into certain numbers. But at the same time, golf is an athletic move, and it's really, about teaching people how to move their body in certain ways, and see if you can find, okay, that's the right way to move your body, and can you repeat that a bunch of times? It's such a magical game. I'm so in love with it. I don't see that ever changing. I was out playing today. I hit some wonderful shots, and then coming down the stretch, I just lost it and just started it, hitting the ball all over the place. I didn't enjoy that much. But the camaraderie, the outdoors, testing yourself. It's never ending, not the mystery that you cannot unravel.
It's funny. I used to talk to some of my fellow pros when I first started doing these broadcasts 13 years ago. And, we used to joke around and said, if you want to play a lot of golf, don't get in the golf business, meaning from a teaching standpoint, because once your dance card starts getting filled up, you never have time to play yourself. And I know so many pros. I remember one young gentleman, and I'll make it brief, but when he first started playing, or started teaching rather, he said, boy, I'm playing about 4 or 5 rounds a week. And he said, I'm just having a great time. I just love the game, working on my game. And I had him on the program for a special segment. I guess it was about a year and a half later, and he was really starting to develop. And so before we went on air, I said to him, how's your golf game? He said, it's just gone down the tubes. And I said, well, what's happening? He said, I'm so busy out in the teaching, on the lesson tee. He said, I don't have time to play anymore. He said, I used to play, 4 or 5 times a week. He said, I'm lucky if I get out a couple of times a month for himself. And he said, practicing, forget about it. So, he said, but now, again, he's busy and he's doing other things, but still teaching, of course. But, again, this is sort of a joke that we've had in the industry for a long time. And I imagine it's similar for you too. I mean, obviously I'm sure you get to play a fair bit, but, you're busy doing your thing and you're, crunching numbers and you're out there communicating with people in the industry. And there's got to be moments when you're sitting there, boy, I'd just love to get out and knock the ball around a little bit, a little more often, let's say, than probably what you do. And I'm sure you get to play a fair bit, but I'm sure that's changed over the years as you've gotten busier in your job. Some final thoughts and words before I let you go. What would you like to close with?
The intrinsic values of the game are always going to show through. However many hundreds of years people have been playing, you got $102 billion industry, but it still comes down to being an industry of people. This is a human analog game. Thinking about the way certain things have been moving, and they move so fast, and the way AI is developing, and NGF is of course working on how can we help golf companies with AI, but this truly is a game of relationships. It's an analog game. It's a way to escape, to get your therapy, to get your head in a different place, to be social, and making the game more approachable, accessible, less intimidating, remove some of the orthodoxies that make it an intimidating game, really are the very simple keys to this industry. Like we're in an incredible, generationally magnificent place right now, and we're always, just like the NGF is always thinking about how we can improve. And I know that most of our brothers and sisters in the fellowship of people who work in this game, what an incredible business where it's really all held together by the fabric of something that's built on authenticity and genuineness.
Yeah. Well said.
And that's the most attractive thing about this game, and let's keep our eye on that. That we remain authentic and genuine and do things that are in the interest of the game and the business of golf. And I'm so fortunate to do what I do, and anybody who's out there who's involved with a golf related business, and I hope they would reach out to the NGF and know that we're a resource that exists for them. Of course, membership dollars is the way,
Sure.
way that we're funded. I'm so lucky to have so many of the biggest golf companies down to a 9-holer in Iowa who help support what we do. And those who are aligned with what we do, we work to give them everything we have to help them be more successful. And, I'm a resource for them, a resource for the industry, and one of the luckiest people on earth, and because of what I do. And by the way, this office that I sit in, yes, Joe Bennett sat in here, but before that, it was Tiger's office.
Oh, okay.
And before that, it was Greg Norman's office.
Wow.
So, sometimes I have to pinch myself, someone who loves the game this much,
right?
That, this is what I do. I get to help golf companies. And so I thank you for, allowing me to be here to share what we do and a little bit about the industry that we look after and promote and help every day.
I couldn't have said it better myself. If people want to go and get more information about the NGF, is there a website that they can go if you want to give them that information as well? And then we'll wrap up.
Absolutely. And it's pretty simple. ngf.org is where someone would find us. And we're here in Jupiter, Florida. And we're a real business with real people, not a remote business.
Right.
And come visit.
Sounds good. I'm going to get you to just hold on for a second as I wrap up, and then I will let you go. So I'll be just wrapping up here in just a moment. But I appreciate you coming on and spending time with myself and my audience. And I look forward to having you come back and join me again in a future show. But let me just wrap up and I'll be right with you. All right. That was my very special guest, Greg Nathan from the NGF, joining me here as my featured guest of the evening. I also want to give a special thanks to the Coaches Corner panel, to Jim Endicott and Pete Buchanan for joining me on tonight's broadcast, and also a special thanks to our travel segment guests, co-host and travel expert, Robert Kaufman and Jake Browning Perry from Golfbreaks by PGA Tour. Thanks, guys, for coming in and giving us some insightful tips on where to go and have some fun out there golfing. But thanks to everybody. Don't forget to tune in each and every week here on the Riverside.fm platform. I'll also be uploading all this segment up onto the iGolf Sports YouTube channel, as well as Spotify and Spreaker.com. The audio version will be going that and to all of the podcast platforms that you listen to your audio podcasts as well. But thank you, everybody, for joining me this week. I will see you next Thursday with some more great guests and another Coaches Corner panel. God bless everybody, and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coaches Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.